right, so today for my presentation, I'm going to be talking about and discussing Denali National Park. This can be found in Alaska, and I'm Dylan Curran. So let's get right into it. So really, kind of broke it down, this presentation, with kind of an introduction, right, and then kind of certain details mixed in kind of throughout the presentation. And I thought, just learning about this national park, the information was very, very interesting, and learned a lot, doing stuff, like this. And so like I said, let's get right into it. The introduction, like I said, I'm just gonna be discussing the Denali National Park, which is actually found in Alaska. The national park is home to some of the greatest landmarks, not just in the state of Alaska, but the entire world. And also, it has some of the greatest wildlife in the world as well. It's just some background to kind of ease our way into this. Denali National Park was founded way back in 1917. That's when it was founded, and back then it was actually originally named Mount McKinley, but was obviously later changed to Mount Denali as we know it today. And as I mentioned kind of a couple seconds ago, this national park is one of the greatest landmarks, not just in the United States, but the entire world. And it attracts over 400,000 visitors every single year. So obviously Alaska is not the most, I would say, manageable place to try and get to, but it's so great that 400,000 visitors travel there every year, and that's just a range, right? It's not like a 400,000 on the dot. So that number could exceed 400,000, in a year, or it could decrease by not decrease by 400,000, but decrease from 400,000. But yeah, I mean, that was just kind of the average that the source had. And if you end up traveling to Denali, it's a big decision, right? Long trip out to Alaska, but people mainly go there during the months of May and September. Kind of the people that do take the trip out. And some history for you. Normally, if you've ever been to a national park or explored it, in my I don't want to say instance, but in my when I was at a national park, I went to Yellowstone, and when you walk like around the park and you go see different stuff, they have trails for you to walk on, kind of thing, and it leads you kind of different ways. This park, it only has walkways near the roads. There's not many walkways and that kind of stuff that you would probably expect a typical national park to maybe have. These are the paths are and the walkways are more near the roads. Also, three main rock types that you can find at Denali are limestone, sandstone, and shale. These are all forms of sedimentary rock, and they're the three most common that you will find in this park. Also, these rocks are made through the process of batholith. That is how you say it, batholith. This is actually a part of Earth's crust, the batholith, located below the surface, obviously, since it's in the Earth's crust, formed by Denali's granite. And that's how these rocks kind of break off, and limestone, sandstone, and shale, as I said, are the three main ones, and they're all forms of sedimentary rock. Also, some kind of geological things that this park has is, one of the things is called cirques. I think is how you say it. I looked it up. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's how you say it, cirques. But you can find these at the national park, and it's kind of it's not like a thing where you go that's a cirque, right? It's kind of just like an overview of it. They're formed by glacial erosion, and these are half open to hollows that are very steep as well. It kind of, I don't want to say it creates a walkway, and then it's, like I said, it's kind of an overview, but in a sense, that's kind of what it is. It is unknown how many of these are in the park. Unfortunately, I couldn't get an exact number for it, but as you can tell, I actually have a picture on this presentation. So when the presentation will be pulled up, you'll be able to see this picture in the top right. And I mean, they're just beautiful. I mean, just the way that it encapsulates the areas I was saying is just beautiful. And another geologic wonder, or something called braided rivers. These braided rivers, maybe not heard of them, maybe you have. If you haven't, these rivers have meandering streams, and what I mean by that is they kind of disperse out and that kind of thing. They curve and bend. They also interweave tracks in the sediment. That's kind of how you can identify something, like a braid. That's how you can identify something like this. And some examples of this, a braided river, are the Toklat River, which is in fact one of the largest braided rivers to cross the park. The river, as I said, was one of the biggest, and it stretches about 85 miles long. But there is a river that stretches 90 miles long, and at times also flows north to the Niana River, which in this one that stretches 90 miles long is called the Teklanika River. Teklanika River stretches 90 miles long. And these two, they're not, from this side to this side, and that's, the park, right? It kind of, extends out, to the north and to the south, but those are, some of the two main well-known braided rivers. If you do, go to Denali National Park. Some past events, obviously there were some volcanoes that erupted and earthquakes that went off, but I found something that was it was somewhat interesting, and it was in 1967. A tragedy happened at what was called Mount McKinley instead of Denali at the time. This tragedy I'm referring to is the Mount McKinley disaster. 7 climbers on the mountain would pass away, unfortunately, due to a blizzard that was very, very intense on the mountain. Unfortunately, as I said, 7 people passed away, and this was obviously taken as a big deal. So much so that the park services even debated closing the park altogether. This event happened in 1967. But yeah, as I said, unfortunately, 7 people had passed. But the silver lining in this is they kept the park open and let it keep developing. As I said, volcanoes and earthquakes would go off, but I felt like that was a big kind of thing that maybe not a lot of people would know about, that happened in Denali National Park. Future events, there are no guarantees of what will happen at Denali, but one source that I was reading said that about 50 to 70 times a year volcanoes will erupt, and that's just an average again. So again, they do have active volcanoes. It's not I don't want to say a dead volcano park, but I mean, because it's not at all. Like I said, 50 to 70 times a year. I was actually kind of surprised by that number. And also earthquakes, they will most likely not happen. Maybe like an earthquake, we would think of like, buildings collapsing and all that horrible stuff. But just because of the seismic activity of the area and where the park is located specifically, they will experience earthquakes, some bad, some not as bad, right? But again, like I said, they will experience some earthquakes off and on. And then some wildlife. Denali was actually the first ever national park created to protect wildlife, and after seeing the great positivity that came from enforcing these laws, other wildlife, atmospheres, parks, places, they soonly followed, which was a wise move to protect the wildlife, obviously. This park, Denali, is home to 39 different mammal species, 169 different bird species, and 1 amphibian species that live in the area. Unfortunately, because the park is so far north, the reptiles are not able to sustain living there, which is why there's only 1 amphibian. The birds, 169 bird species, they actually are only there for the warm weather, and then they are not there for the cold weather months. That's all I got. My sources are here at the end of the presentation, which you'll see, but that's all I got. Very informational learning about this mountain, and I hope you got as much information out of it as I did. So that's all I got.